What it do, Cox? It's your boy, the hater, up in this space. And it took me a minute to finish Raw because for some reason on Netflix, I couldn't start it from the beginning. I clicked start from the beginning because I tuned in a little late, and it took me to the Liv Morgan match, which means I missed the Cena promo, so I waited until the show ended, then I watched the beginning of the show so I could do this review for y'alls. And obviously, because I like John Cena. Right now, let's get to it. Raw after WrestleMania. As a Raw after WrestleMania, this was underwhelming. I think we all know that. But anyways, as usual, let's go over it segment by segment. Motherfucks. The hater says it like a goat because the hater is the goat. Anyways, so Cena comes out. We're going to do it in reverse order, in chronological order, even though I saw it backwards. Cena comes out, runs down the crowd, right? He gives the announcer a little piece of paper that basically makes the announcer announce him as the Never Seen 17, which I like it. It has a nice ring to it, right? He basically just talks shit, and he starts a countdown of his dates, right? He had 36 dates this year, and he's going to make 36 appearances, not matches, obviously, right? And then, he counts down all the stuff that's already happened, so we're now at 27. Presumably, this is I guess the ninth one or something like that. So he has 27 left, right? He just keeps talking shit to the crowd. He doesn't mention Cucky Rhodes, which I liked. There was no Cucky Rhodes here, which I also liked. And then, ultimately, Orton comes up from behind like a coward and RKO's him, Now, this is interesting. Like, who's going to say that this is not interesting, right? We have Randy Orton as a face, kind of, right? Randy Orton is just Randy Orton, really. He's not really a face. But we have Randy Orton as a face, technically, versus Cena as a heel. Now, the dynamic is interesting, but the match is not going to be, and the storyline is not going to be, because, quite frankly, Cena's heel turn is still a disaster. Let's not get it twisted, motherfucks. Cena's heel turn has been terrible. Cena is not a good heel. There's a reason why he was a face forever. He's not a good heel in this incarnation. He was a good heel when he was like the rap Cena, because he was young and cocky and arrogant, and he had a nice little gimmick. But now, that's no longer the Cena that we all grew up with. This is just the same face John Cena. He just hates everybody now, right? He's just an angry John Cena. So, this is not going to change the trajectory of the John Cena-Randy Orton feud in any capacity. So, it doesn't really make a difference, right? Orton does, the typical grab the belt and put it over Cena's dead body, basically, right? It's going to be versus Orton first. Get that out of the way so that we can see Cena versus Cucky Rhodes again. A lot of things happened in this episode that I didn't like, that I think pretty much kill the momentum of wrestling going forward. This was not one of them. This is obviously a filler match, but this pretty much leads me to believe that it's going to be Cena versus Cucky at SummerSlam, you know what I mean? So that's not good. Nobody wants to see that, if you ask me. Then we got Becky and Lyra dropping the belts to Judgment Day again, right? So I didn't think that Becky and Lyra were going to win last night because at the NXT Stand and Deliver, I almost called it the NXT pay-per-view, imagine that. The team, whatever, like Tatum Paxley and the other one, they won the women's gauntlet, so they're the next in line. So I'm thinking to myself, I don't see Becky Lynch just sticking around that much. And more importantly, I don't see Becky Lynch wrestling on NXT, So I was validated because that's exactly what happened. They dropped the titles. Becky Lynch then turns on Lyra Valkyria. Last night, Michael Cole didn't even know that Becky Lynch was trained by Lyra. That Lyra was trained by Becky Lynch or whatever the connection is. Wade Barrett had to tell him. Michael Cole's yeah, they kind of know each other, whatever, right? So now Michael's I can't believe she'd do it to her best friend. In a typical betrayal. Becky lays a beating on her, leaves, comes back, lays another beating. We've seen this 100 times, and quite frankly, Lyra Valkyria, in her current state, and I think pretty much always, this is going to be a problem with her. She's not interesting at all, right? So someone betraying her is completely irrelevant, right? It would be like if someone betrayed Naomi. Nobody cares if you betray Naomi, you know what I mean? Nobody likes Naomi. Nobody likes Lyra Valkyria. It's not a big deal if you betray them, right? Because nobody cares about them in the slightest. Lyra Valkyria has the same problem as Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley. They have no personality. They don't really connect with the fans. And if it weren't for the fact that Rhea Ripley has a nice little theme and she gets over-promoted, she would be in the same boat as Bianca Belair, getting booed at every single chance people get. Nobody likes people that are thrusted down our throats, right? Bianca Belair is just like a female John Cena and a female Roman Reigns. Rhea Ripley is the same, except she's a goth. She's not presented as this like quintessential athlete. Like, for example, Cena is like this goody goody two shoes, and he always wins. Bianca Belair is a goody goody two shoes who always wins, right? Rhea Ripley is not a goody goody two shoes. She's like a Randy Orton. You know what I mean? But she does always win, unlike Randy Orton. Anyways, nobody could possibly care about any of this. Next up, New Day come out, and as they're coming out backstage, you see Karrion Kross smiling, which I thought was a nice touch because he tried to get them to turn heel, and they ultimately did. And now he's trying to do the same thing with AJ. The problem is that it took like a year. You know what I mean? It was like Karrion Kross doing this for like a year. Nobody cared at all. They had Odyssey Jones involved. He got fired. You all know the shtick, right? Basically, but it was a nice little touch, right? Alpha Academy come out and Maxine says New Day needs to man up and calls them Minutemen as Pat sings the "I don't want no Minuteman," whatever. It's just really stupid insult, but whatever. That goes down, and before the title match could happen, because they goad the New Day into a title match, the segment is ruined by the returning Rusev. Now, I never really got why people loved Rusev so much. I like Rusev, he's entertaining, but people acted like, oh, Rusev not getting pushed. Like, he's like a Wade Barrett, you know what I mean? And like, people act like he was like the next Undertaker. Like, if you didn't know any better, you'd think like Rusev is like Kane or something. He's fucking Rusev, But it's been 5 years, and in these 5 years, the wrestler stuff continued to shrink. So Rusev now is by far like the most believable guy on Monday nights. Arguably, like they're used, because you still have Braun Breaker, but arguably it's Rusev. Like, he just looks like $1,000,000, He's not even like that fat anymore. He's just like jacked. So he comes in there, he destroys Otis and Tozawa. I don't see this going anywhere though. You know what I mean? This has Karrion Kross written all over it. You know what I mean? Rusev is just not gonna work out. He should, but he's not going to. And sure as shit, you can tell based on how he was presented today that it's not gonna work out. He debuted by attacking like Otis and Tozawa. It's just like, remember when Bray Wyatt debuted and he attacked like a last year of his career Kane? Like I said, you expect Bray Wyatt to premiere and attack like Cena or something. He attacks Kane, right? It's the same thing. Like, it's like he's not attacking anybody important, but Rusev is back. I don't think anybody really cares. I mean, he's a fun little addition. But this is kind of like when Cesaro debuted in AEW. It's like, it's not going to go anywhere. No one actually cares, and that it's going to be a complete waste of time. Next up, Io Sky comes out and cuts a passable promo, given that she doesn't speak English. I understood everything she said. She basically said she's the best. Can't argue with that. Her logic was sound. She's like, I beat the best, so now I'm the best, right? She was cool, in my opinion, back in the day when she would just come out dressed like a normal person. When she was wearing like the black leather pants or even like the blue jeans, dressed like a normal person. Now she dresses like Asuka, like Asuka, but whatever, right? She speaks Japanese and everyone cheers, which just proves that she's massively over. Whether you like it or not, being over means something, right? Last night I went at the suggestion of a friend. I'd never really gone to this like more than a couple of times, but I went to r/squared circle, and it's like these morons. They're like, oh, the internet fans have more nuanced takes. No, the internet fans don't know what the fuck they're talking about. The casual fan knows a lot more than the hardcore internet fan, because the hardcore internet fan fundamentally is just a person that started watching 5-6 years ago, and they're trying to catch up. So you hear things like, oh, my favorite match was like Junya, like Akihara versus like Tatsuyoki Mitsurugi. No, it wasn't. Nobody knows that match. You didn't like that match. That match is not as fun as Scotty 2 Hotty versus like fucking S8 Rios, but whatever, right? Anyways, eventually Stephanie Vaquer comes out. I really like Stephanie Vaquer. Number one, she's an attractive woman, which we don't have many of in wrestling anymore, and that brings back the Attitude Era days, where that was like the draw of the women. You had tough, strong men that looked like they could kick your ass, and like very attractive women who looked sexy, right? Nowadays, you have like men like JD McDonough, more on him later, and women like Bianca Belair and like Rhea Ripley, who are like I've said it before, like Bianca Belair is obviously an attractive girl, but I don't know, she's just presented with like zero sexuality, you know what I mean? And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's like, why? You know what I mean? Why? Wrestling was presented like that for a long time, and it was successful, but people look back on it like, oh, I can't believe that people would care about how beautiful Trish Stratus was. I only cared about the crispness of her kicks. Yeah, I know. That's why you're a dork. So anyways, that goes down. And Stephanie Vaquer, even though like she's a very attractive woman, her sexuality is not played up. She's just very attractive. Like, for a wrestler today, I guess. But anyways, another thing that I like about her is she's from Chile, which means she's a Latina, even though she's obviously white, but everybody knows Latinas can be white, they can be black, they can be anything, right? She's a Latina, but she doesn't have like a Latina gimmick, you know what I mean? Which I really like, because I don't understand how an entire continent of like 1 billion people is stereotyped into like being the same thing. Like, Lola Vice from, NXT, she's okay, like I don't have anything against Lola Vice. Or do you remember Rosa Mendez? Right? It's like she's just basically like a Hispanic girl stereotype, And whereas Stephanie Vaquer is not that. I don't know what the fuck she is, but she's not that, right? She comes out wearing like ram horns, but whatever, right? So she basically cuts a promo in English, which is also her second language, which kind of pissed me off. It's like you have these two foreigners, like taking up valuable time on Raw. Now, before any of you get antsy in the pantsy and start calling the hater a xenophobe, the hater is a fucking immigrant to this country. But you wouldn't know that, right? Because the hater took his time and learned the language. English is also my second language, cuckolds, but it doesn't stop me, right? And I get it. These are young girls, maybe they'll learn it one day. And I'm not here to judge their language, but it's just like fucking annoying. It's like someone should be able to come out and say, what the fuck is going on? I didn't understand anything you just said. Like, imagine if like a female Jericho came out and said like, I didn't understand anything you just said. Please say it again. Shut your mouths, right? Anyways, that doesn't happen, but basically Julia and somebody else, I forget who the other person is, Roxanne Perez, they come in and they attack the two girls that are in the ring during the match, right? They have a match. The match apparently is good. I wasn't paying attention. I was watching it on my phone, but I was doing laundry. So that's what it is, motherfucks. But the match was good. Stephanie Vaquer did her ass jump, the knees to the mat, like, thing that Booker T likes. The move is whatever. We've seen other people do it. We've seen other women do it. But for some reason, Stephanie Vaquer got it over. So the fans reacted to it. Now, with all that being said, after the match was ruined, obviously the interference is just like a regular interference. So everyone's getting their asses beat, and then you hear, "This is my brutality!" And it's like, all right, of course Rhea Ripley has to come in with entrance music. This woman can never make like, an innocuous entrance. Everything she does, you have to like hear that song, right? It's like, if she's like doing her taxes, if she's taking a shit, that song is just playing in the background. It's really stupid because it's like, she's like, I'm gonna go, help out like the people there. Then presumably she goes to the people who are like doing audio and she's like, play my music. And then she runs. Like, doesn't make any sense. She comes out there, she beats up everybody that's evil. Her and Julia have a stare down. Julia, in my opinion, looks like she works in Pattaya, Thailand. Pattaya, Pattaya. Everybody knows that song. It's a classic. Anyways, Rhea steals the thunder, and Bianca ain't even there, right? So, like, Rhea steals the thunder from the segment that had nothing to do with her, right? The segment was, like, Stephanie Vaquer's debut on Raw, as well as Io Sky doing her job. Honestly, I have to give some props to Io Sky because she wrestles a lot, right? She wrestles a lot, and, like, she's probably wrestled more than fucking Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley combined, like, last year. So she gets my respect for that. But once again, Rhea Ripley steals the thunder. Bianca Belair is a complete afterthought. She's not even there. But she is on SmackDown, so, maybe she's just going to show up back on SmackDown. Who the fuck knows? She can go there and have a feud with Jade Cargill. That actually would be somewhat compelling. So we'll go with that. Cucks. Anyways, after this, they show CM Punk is there. He's probably going to bitch and moan, but we'll see. Next, it's Jey Uso. Oos! You know what I'm saying? They show Jay as a child and he has the same exact haircut as now. Then they show him dressed like Chingy in 2000. There's like a thing where he's like sitting down, he has like a do-rag on for some reason. It doesn't make any sense at all. Oh, hater, you don't understand the culture. Like he's Polynesian, motherfucker. But anyways, he's out there looking like Chingy. I was like, holy shit, what's Chingy doing there? Oh shit, it's Jey Uso. Right? And he's like skinny and he doesn't look like a champion at all. But then they show his evolution, and honestly, it really is rather impressive considering he was a jobber and now he's a pretend world champion. And he did this after his association with Roman Reigns was over, right? In other words, it wasn't like he was part of the bloodline and during that he got the push. No, he got the push after that. And quite frankly, there's a lot to be learned about the way that Jey Uso got himself over. Number one, I want to say that we can do much worse than Jey Uso. In fact, we did do much worse than Jey Uso. We had Cody Rhodes as champion, and we had Gunther as champion. Jey Uso, in my opinion, is more entertaining than both of them, so I enjoy Jey Uso for what he is. Now, with that being said, I don't like the dancing and all that bullshit, but what I do like is the philosophy behind Jey Uso, right? A lot of people forget what Jey Uso represents, right? He represents that very, very relatable thing when sometimes in life, you find yourself with your back against the wall and you got nobody, right? That's the whole point of Jey Uso. It's just me, Oos. Everyone turned their back on Jey Uso. But Jey Uso persevered. He got himself over, and he's done very well for himself, considering that this is a guy that debuted one day. And as I look at these two jobbers, they're going to be tag team champions a few times. Not only is Jey Uso one of the best tag team wrestlers ever at this point, but he's also like a world champion now. Is he the worst world champion of all time? No, because Gunther has been world champion. Because Ezekiel Jackson has been world champion, right? There's been many worse world champions. However, he's definitely one of the worst world champions. Nevertheless, it's enjoyable. I didn't like the way that the show went with respect to Jey Uso, but the segment was okay. Basically, Sami Zayn comes down and he says he hasn't been around for 8 weeks. He doesn't explain why, but that's good because I don't care at all. Right? Then he says he had to come, but he didn't want to come, but he came anyways. Whatever. So they celebrate. And there's a part where they tease that Sami Zayn might betray Jey Uso. He doesn't. Jim Uso comes out. They all sing and dance. This was actually an entertaining moment. Not the singing and dancing, but what it represents, right? I'll give you a great parallel. From the haters' country, there's these two rappers, right, who are making it big now, right? The hater comes from a relatively small country, so like making it big there doesn't mean like much, but they're probably millionaires in dollars, I guess, right? And these guys have been around for a long time. For a long, long time, these two motherfuckers have been around. Even though they're like in their late 30s or maybe early 40s, they've been around for a long time, since they were like teenagers. These are like people that started rapping in like the late 90s. You know what I mean? They're like almost contemporaries with Tupac, but obviously in a different market where rap music wasn't as big, right? And these guys were featured in a lot of songs, and now finally, they made it out on their own, right? Independently. Like, they do a lot of songs together, but they're two independent artists. So the idea is, like, they've now surpassed the people that would feature them. They were like these young boys that surpassed, that overcame, right? And that's what this moment, to me, encapsulated, right? Sami Zayn and the Usos through Jey Uso, but all these three guys were just lackeys, right? And this was a lackey moment. But I don't mean that in a disrespectful way. I mean that for what it was, right? Three lackeys now have a moment to celebrate the fact that they're no longer lackeys. This is massive, for them, right? This is a big moment for Jey Uso and, secondarily for Jimmy and Sami Zayn, right? The idea is like Sami Zayn was like a lackey. He was a towel boy, basically. And now he's in the starting lineup. So I enjoyed that, nothing wrong with this segment. Then we have a Logan Paul interview and an AJ Karrion Kross segment. Complete waste of time. It's the same thing as last night. Karrion Kross says, you validated Logan Paul. Like, Logan Paul is a better wrestler than Karrion Kross. Like, this philosophy that, like, the boys, like, you have to pay your dues. Like, again, not to bring up technical work rate productions, but it's like those two jerk-offs, right? Remember in my first feud with them, they were like, oh, Hater didn't pay his dues. Like, these people think that the world is wrestling, And the world isn't wrestling. And even wrestling isn't wrestling because, as we saw, Logan Paul doesn't have to pay his dues. Logan Paul doesn't have to go through ladders like Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens did because Logan Paul is better than Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens. He's a better athlete. He's better looking. He's more charismatic. He looks better in his physique. And he's better in the ring. And he's better at promos. He's better than Sami Zayn at literally everything. There's not one thing that Sami Zayn does better than Logan Paul. So why the fuck should Logan Paul have to go break his head in the indies? That's for the Daniel Bryans of the world. That's for the Cedric Alexanders of the world, right? The real stars, people like Logan Paul, people like The Miz, people like Rusev even, right? These are people that don't need to go and pay their dues, right? Rusev was signed very early, went to NXT for a little bit, went to Raw, got dropped to AEW. He came back today. He didn't debut in NXT attacking Obafemi, which actually probably would have been better. That would have been actually pretty interesting. But he didn't need to do that because he's above Obafemi, right? Rusev is Rusev. Obafemi is Obafemi. Rusev doesn't go back to NXT. He's not Drew McIntyre. He's not Andrade. He's a bigger deal. When he left, he was a bigger deal than when Drew McIntyre left. Comparing them, right? When Drew McIntyre left, he was a massive jobber. So, of course, Drew McIntyre, as a massive jobber, has to now go back to NXT to establish that he's no longer a massive jobber, right? Rusev doesn't have to do that. He can come in and beat somebody up, right? The Indies and NXT, by extension, are for people that belong in the Indies and NXT. There are, of course, exceptions. Braun Breaker is better than Rusev, and he has to go to NXT. There are exceptions when you get signed by the WWE, right? But generally speaking, that's not how it's going to go for other people. So anyways, after this, we have a segment that just pretty much starts out of nowhere. Like, we go to commercial, I guess, because I was watching it. I skipped the commercials, of course. Gunther is just complaining to Michael Cole and Pat McAfee. He pushes Pat McAfee, then he puts Michael Cole in the sleeper. Pat McAfee just punches him in the face, and then all of a sudden, Gunther just chokes out Pat McAfee, right? Now, and then as this is happening, there's like a few fans that jump the barricade, they get neutralized immediately by the real security, not by like Pat Buck and whatever, what's his name, Jordan Alexander, whatever, Jason Jordan. Like, not by these jobbers. They get attacked by the real security who are like, that's their job, and they just get dropped immediately. It was great to see. Now, here's the thing about this, right? I understand that Pat McAfee is presented as not being a pussy, right? But he shouldn't be presented like that, right? The reality is, Gunther is a very punchable guy. Now, Gunther is a big man. Like, so for example, the hater's not going to sit here and say, I'd beat up Gunther. He's not Sami Zayn. I understand that. I understand that Gunther is a big, strong guy. But because he's a big, strong guy, the announcer shouldn't have the balls to put his hands on him, right? Like, for example, JR, right, would get attacked by people all the time. And if, like, Taz was attacking him, then the King, he would stand up for JR because it's understandable, right? Like, King can't believably beat up Taz, right? But if The Undertaker is going to make JR kiss his ass, King is not going to go in there and fuck with The Undertaker, right? There are limits to what King is capable of doing. And part of that is a form of burial on King, right? Because it's like, oh, King only stands up to like mid-carders or below. But the reality is, motherfucks, like the true point, the real thing that's happening here is that King is an announcer, right? And he should be terrified of The Undertaker, as would almost any man that's ever lived. Like a prime Undertaker, like a 6'10" guy with fucking sleeve tattoos in the early 2000s and late 90s. This guy looks like he'll fucking tear you apart. So of course the regular folks should be scared of him. Of course Taka Michinoku and Shannon Moore should be terrified of him. But nowadays the announcer can punch the former world heavyweight champion. This would be the equivalent of like Michael Cole back in the day punching Kane. You know what happened instead? Kane would like threaten to set Michael Cole on fire, or Heidenreich would almost rape him. You know what I mean? This is how this works, cucks. The announcers are a good part of the show, but they shouldn't have the balls to like stand up to Gunther, right? And if they do, what should happen is exactly what happened. They get their ass kicked, right? I don't know where this is going to go. Quite frankly, I don't give a flying fuck. But anyways, it is what it is. Nothing happened in this. Afterwards, Cole complains to Adam Pearce and says he's going back. He goes back. The fans are chanting for him. Now it's time for our final match. Penta versus Dom. Finn Balor, I think Finn Balor, it's time for a Finn Balor video. Finn Balor is I think anyone that's objective and is doing a top 10 list of worst wrestlers of all time, Finn Balor has to be on there, motherfucks. Finn Balor is one of the worst wrestlers ever. As a matter of fact, in my opinion, he's the most overrated wrestler ever because he's a former world champion and this guy should have never even been a cruiserweight champion. Finn Balor has nothing going for him. He's got a great physique. But other than that, which is very impressive, other than that, he's got nothing going for him. He's a small guy who does no moves, right? Like, legitimately. Logan Paul this year at WrestleMania did more moves than Finn Balor has done his entire WWE run. Like, sometimes I exaggerate, but this is not an exaggeration. I don't even think it's close. I think, Logan Paul probably did, 10 moves, and Finn Balor has done about 5 his whole career. Finn Balor is garbage. But that's one thing to be garbage in the ring and to be garbage overall, and it's another thing to be garbage in kayfabe. Finn Balor is also garbage in kayfabe, right? Finn Balor, these last few years, basically the entire storyline of Finn Balor is Finn Balor has failed consistently for 5 years. Finn Balor joins Judgment Day, they kick Edge out. He is the de facto leader of Judgment Day because at the pay-per-view, right, at WrestleMania, it was Edge versus Finn Balor. It wasn't Edge versus Damian Priest, right? And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is Finn Balor was presented as the number one guy in Judgment Day. Then that shit hits the fan. He gets surpassed by Damian Priest. He gets surpassed by Rhea Ripley. The only 2 other people in the group. Then they get Dominic and they get Carlito and they get Liv Morgan, JD McDonough. All these things happen, right? And Finn Balor is getting surpassed again and again. He's being surpassed by Liv Morgan and Raquel because they're champions. He's now surpassed by Dom, who beat him at WrestleMania. And that's his entire shtick. He's just a loser who just gets surpassed by everybody. And he gets mad and he feuds with them and gets his ass kicked only to be surpassed by somebody else. So Finn Balor, he's doing the whole low-key jealousy thing with Dominic and the IC title. But nobody really cares. Would anyone really be intrigued if Finn Balor betrays Dominic? Would anyone smile and laugh at that or be entertained by that in any capacity? I think the answer to that shit is absolutely not, cuckwads. So that's how that goes down, motherfucks. Anyways, it's Penta versus Dom. After, some time, the Penta goes to the top rope. JD McDonough comes back, pushes him off the top rope. Dom hits the dropkick, 619, frog splash for the win. And that's it. Everyone's happy. Cole says Judgment Day's back on top. It's like, no, they're not. They have one guy who's the Intercontinental Champion. Like, they used to have the World Champion, and the Women's World Champion. But anyways, that's that. Nothing really crazy here. At this point, there's 14 minutes left on the clock, right? Seth Rollins comes out, and I counted. By the time he comes out and he gets the mic and gives it to Heyman, 5 minutes have gone by. So now we have 9 minutes left. Seth Rollins says about 3 words, and then CM Punk comes out. CM Punk doesn't say anything. He's there to fight. He gets his ass kicked. He gets the best of Seth Rollins, goes after Heyman. Punk hits it from Rollins hits it from behind, curb stomps him, right? He's out for like about 1,000 years. Roman Reigns comes out with music, and he comes in there. He spears, Seth Rollins immediately. Then he Superman punches Heyman, who in my opinion no-sells it because he basically gets up almost immediately. But fine, that is what it is. He's getting up so that Roman can spear his monkey ass, right? And as he goes for the spear, a hooded figure, who is clearly Braun Breaker, I was like, oh, is it Brock Lesnar? No, he's too small. It must be Braun Breaker. This person just spears Roman Reigns, right? Then spears CM Punk, who's entering again, right? Then he goes outside to spear Roman Reigns again, but Roman Reigns punches him in the face. He runs all the way around the ring and spears him through the barricade, throws him in, and basically Rollins does a curb stomp to CM Punk again, and then he does one to Roman Reigns. So now, Braun Breaker and Seth Rollins are Paul Heyman guys, and Paul Heyman is happy about this. Now, here's the problem with this, right? I was hoping that Braun Breaker would just go after Jey Uso immediately and win. You know? I didn't expect, nor do I like the fact that he is a Paul Heyman guy. Number one, Paul Heyman guys who have achieved nothing, when they become Paul Heyman guys, typically get released soon thereafter. Curtis Axel, Ryback, Cesaro, the list goes on, right? Or maybe that's it. I can't think of anybody else, actually. I'm sure there's other ones, but definitely those 3 guys, right? They just didn't achieve anything, and then they joined Paul Heyman, and they didn't achieve anything, right? Now, Braun Breaker is not like Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins is a multiple-time world champion. So he can only be buried so much, right? CM Punk is a multiple-time world champion and was one when Paul Heyman got him. Roman Reigns was a multiple-time world champion when Heyman got him, right? The only person that Paul Heyman has, like, helped, quote-unquote, is Brock Lesnar. And if there's anybody in the history of wrestling that you could look at and you could say this guy's inevitable, it's Brock Lesnar, right? There's absolutely no doubt. The first time you see Brock Lesnar, you're like, this guy's like the absolute future. Like, this guy would murder. Like, I've never had that reaction ever. Right? Even with Lashley. Because Lashley, first of all, he's not as beastly as Brock Lesnar was in his prime. And he's very beastly, but not as beastly as Brock Lesnar. And Lashley's just kind of soft, right? Like, he's always like this good guy. He's smiling. Brock Lesnar just is a fucking animal. You know what I mean? And it's just like, he has the intensity like that Lashley will never understand. So Brock Lesnar comes out there. He's just this freak of nature. If you haven't seen Brock Lesnar's debut, watch it. I'm going to watch it after this video. Right? But he's the only one that Paul Heyman has helped. Everybody else that Paul Heyman has been associated with either was a massive star before Heyman or never became anything, right? So that's how that goes down. Now, Braun Breaker is close to Lesnar. He's not a Lesnar by any means. He's not even a Lashley, if we're being honest, right? But he does have the intensity of Brock Lesnar. He has an intensity that Lashley doesn't have. But Lashley's about like 50, 60 pounds bigger than him, you know, so it ain't even close. But Braun Breaker is explosive. He's very athletic. He's very believable. Right? Like when he speared Roman Reigns, it's like there was a moment where I'm like, Roman Reigns is like a little bit bigger than this guy. But if I had to bet money on a fight, like who to win, Roman Reigns or Braun Breaker, I'd pick Braun Breaker 100% of the time. Like I don't think anybody in the WWE currently would have a real chance in a fight against Braun Breaker. Of course, except for like Omos and, you know, Braun Strowman, people like that, right? But like all these other guys like Jacob Fatu, you know, like these are regular ass, like Sami Zayn, these are regular motherfuckers, like they'd have no chance whatsoever. He would like murder them all one by one. But so he is believable. But what I didn't like is clearly Paul Heyman, right before this happened, he declared that Seth Rollins is the reigning, defending, undisputed #1 guy in the business, which means that Braun Breaker is not the reigning, defending #1 guy in the business. He, at best, is the #2 guy in the business. And there's no room here to be #2 behind Seth Rollins. In so many words, they pretty much established that Braun Breaker's new role, for the time being, is that he's going to be a lackey, motherfuckers. Now, lackeys sometimes do very well. Some of the best wrestlers of all time have begun as lackeys. Kevin Nash, he was a lackey to Shawn Michaels. Triple H was a lackey to Shawn Michaels in many ways, right? Randy Orton was a lackey to Triple H. Batista was a lackey to Triple H. And the list goes on and on. Batista was also a lackey to Devon, you know what I mean? A lot of people have been lackeys. Jey Uso was a lackey, arguably still is, right? So a lot of good wrestlers, a lot of good careers. Cookie Rhodes, you know? Like a lot of people have come out of a lackey spotlight, right? I completely understand that. And that is a viable thing to do. Maybe Seth Rollins wins the bullshit world title, and then next year Braun Breaker just wins the Rumble, and and you have the same situation as you did with Triple H and Batista, right? Where like Seth Rollins says, you go to SmackDown and you challenge like whatever, Cody Rhodes, whoever it's gonna be, and we'll dominate, the WWE. And then of course Braun Breaker is gonna choose to go after Seth Rollins, and then he can win the title at WrestleMania. And that is a viable path. But I would much prefer the following booking. After Jey Uso's celebration, next week is what I would do is this. Jey Uso starts the Jey Uso Open Challenge to prove himself worthy. Braun Breaker comes out, squashes him in 2 minutes, right? And that's it. That's it for Jey Uso. He goes away, and he comes back a few months later as a tag team with Jimmy Uso, That's it. Braun Breaker is now the world champion, and he goes on a dominant run, beating like mid-card nobodies, like on the level of like Drew McIntyre or, like Damian Priest, or Chad Gable, or, people of that caliber. He can just plow through those guys left and right. Even Seth Rollins, right? So, but I think that that's what's going to happen effectively is that Braun Breaker is going to get ahead of this because, I don't know, I feel like he's more undeniable than, let's say, Ryback, right? He's more intense. He's more entertaining. Like one thing I will say is this. Lashley and Brock Lesnar, like, would beat him up in real life. But, like, I would argue that Braun Breaker is more entertaining than Lashley and Brock Lesnar. Like, legitimately, he's more entertaining, right? Like, he's not as beastly, right? You're not going to expect him to F5 the Big Show, although he probably could. But you're going to see crazy things, like double suplexes, Frankensteiners. He's more athletic than both of them. You know what I mean? And that's saying a lot, motherfuckers, because I'm comparing him to Lashley and Brock Lesnar, who are, like, two of the top, easily 10 athletes in the WWE history. But I think Braun Breaker is the most athletic. After maybe like Kurt Angle or something like that. Like, he is just a freak, He does things, like, they talk about Jacob Fatu, they're like, a man this size should be able to do this. All he does is a moonsault, Braun Breaker, like, jumps, scales the turnbuckle, and does a no-hand Frankensteiner. This guy's crazy athletic. But anyways, it's not here nor there. The point is, this episode of Raw was mid at best. Personally, I didn't like it. But I will say this. More stars appeared than I thought would have appeared, right? So there's something to be said about that. However, like, that's almost like a false flag, you know what I mean? Because what I think is going to happen is that basically, like, and I could be wrong, but basically, I think that today was the day that people like CM Punk and Roman Reigns get removed for a while, right? Like, it's like they were here today, but I don't see them being here next week, right? I just don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong. Anything's possible. But, that's how that went down. Now, a couple of other things, right? Rusev re-debuted. Good for Rusev. I got nothing against Rusev. But I'm trying to think. Oh, I guess technically, like, Stephanie Vaquer debuted. But I don't know if I count that as a debut. Like, she's going to go back to NXT. It's not like, it's not like there's going to be anything crazy like with her next week or something like that. So I guess we'll just say honestly it's just Rusev. And, while Rusev is a perfectly fine wrestler in terms of like coming back, I got nothing against Rusev coming back. Like, he was the only debut, and the Raw after WrestleMania is somewhat known for debuts, returns, things like that. We didn't really see anything. So, for a Raw after WrestleMania, I find this to be lacking. But for a random episode of Raw, I got no problem with it. It was okay. It was there were times when I found this to be entertaining and, somewhat like, doable, I guess you could say. I don't know. It's weird, right? Because, in one hand, you want to like it because, like, the people did show up. But on the other hand, like, who the fuck cares, right? Nothing was really established beyond the Randy Orton situation with John Cena. But, like, that wasn't really established that well either. So, That's what you get, cucks. We don't get to control the outcomes here. We're not Vince McMahon. But, we do get to control what we talk about segment by segment and with these little mini rants attached to the segment. So take care of yourselves, cuckolds.